70% of workers in the United States work paycheck to paycheck. So that means like if your carburetor goes out, or you even blow a flat tire, or if your son breaks his leg or something, right, and you need to pay like a $400 or $500 bill, you're screwed, right? You don't make your car payment. That means you can't get to work. If you can't get to work, that mean you don't get paid that month. That means you could lose your. It means you could get kicked out and you'd be a homeless that month, right? That's what paycheck to paycheck. And 78%, almost like 4/5, almost all the country is paycheck to paycheck. 71% of the U.S. is in debt. Even if you make over 6 figures, 1 in 10 Americans that make over $100,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck, right? So I mean, you get $10,000 in your paycheck, and all of that is going to pay your healthcare, rent, your car, right? Some of it's going to tax. You're paying, your childcare, right? If you make $100,000, there's a good chance that you're working a whole hell of a lot, right? Like 60, 80 hours. Actually, I know multiple aircraft engineers. One of them was homeless and lived in a van. He was making $110,000 per year. I think with his wife, his and his wife's combined income was $140,000 a year. He had only one child, with no major health problems. He lived in a van in a Walmart parking lot because the rent on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, which is a city, it's not the most expensive city in the United States. It's more expensive than some cities in the United States, but it's kind of median, right? But you need $157,000 a year to afford the median home price, the median apartment price as well. So even if you want an apartment that you can fit 2 children in, you're looking at $160,000 a year. Raise your hand if you're making over $100,000 per year, right? Now raise your hand if you're making over $150,000 per year, right? If that's not you, you cannot live in a city. That's what I said. Somebody said in Vietnam, if you have $1,000 to $2,000 a month, that's poverty in the United States. That's abject poverty. Where we are, that's total poverty, right? You can live in a 2-bedroom apartment. You can have food, healthcare, childcare. You can afford. You're not worrying about if my son gets hurt or my daughter gets hurt, or if I have to pay for insulin this month. I'm not gonna be having to like go into diabetic ketoacidosis and possibly die because I didn't get paid this month. Because the corporation was like, well, we're not gonna pay you because fuck you, because it's capitalism. So if you say Vietnam is a shithole, it's like one of my cousin is living in Toronto, but he can't afford anywhere in Toronto. He has to live like 10 miles out of Toronto. The average Vancouver unattached home price is $1 million. In Indiana, South Bend, where the average home price is $150,000. They have 6 kids. 3 of them, one of them lives in like the most dangerous, like they have to have fucking Kevlar on the walls in Detroit where they're like drive-by shootings. And you can buy a place for like $50,000 in that area. And he's a doctor and he lives there. So, and then 3 of the kids, 3 of the 6 siblings said, we can't afford to have children. I'm 30 years old. I'm an elementary school teacher. My husband is a, low-level employee or low-level office employee. We can't afford to have any children ever. So you want us to have children, right? As a 20 to 35-year-old, fucking pay us, right? The boomer grandparents going like, oh, please have kids. All our grandkids are gone, and we're just so sad. So the grandma, so the dad, the grandpa, the boomer grandpa, is basically never gonna stop working and is subsidizing each of these 3 families. I'm guessing tens of thousands of dollars to his children, paying them to have kids. In Indiana, where the home prices are like they're like nothing, they're like 150,000, 250,000, nothing. So anyway, so those are some interesting statistics. I mean, just in terms of like the global cyberpunk dystopian hellscape, 2019 Cyberpunk Dystopian Hell World Apocalypse Report. Those are very dire. I mean, I was just talking to a bunch of them this past week, and it was like, yeah, nobody's fucking making it anywhere. So if you aren't making it, don't feel bad. If your parents don't have $20,000 or $30,000, oh, James also said one of his friends, he left San Diego. In San Diego, it's incredibly expensive as well. You need to make $200,000 a year to live in San Diego. He's a millennial, right? Driving Uber, making some fucking killer app, right? Editing papers on, gig economy, fucking Mechanical Turk, my overeducated, underemployed millennial and Gen Z.com fucking site, right? Working 3 different jobs. He had kids and he moved for, like, I think he actually had kids, but he had to move like into some area where there's like hookworms and there's no sanitation system because the government is just, it's all been eaten by some mega bank, and the entire, like, it's like somewhere in the shittiest part of Oklahoma. or Missouri somewhere, right? And the parents are like, please come back to San Diego. Please come back to San Diego. Grandma wants to see her kids. Grandma wants to see her kid. And he said, well, fuck, I ain't going back to San Diego. How am I supposed to afford a $2 million house in San Diego, right? And so, but the parents were like multi-millionaire inheritors of like fucking generations of genocide, colonialism, supremacy, white supremacy, and capitalist accumulation. So they have like $30 million locked up in some multiple hedge funds, and and a fucking giant ass 401k that alone could buy a small African country. And they're paying their child. They bought a $3 million house for their kid to live in San Diego. So if you don't have rich parents in America, like I said, neofeudalism. If you don't have rich parents and you're an American, don't feel bad. If you don't have rich parents and you're American, you don't have a neo-feudal elite inheritance or a trust fund or something, you're fucked. There's no such thing as mobility in America. There's no such thing as survival in America. Don't feel bad about being fucked. Your job as an American, if you are not in the top 5%, is to die. That's your job. Go to prison and work. If you're black or brown, go to prison and make Amazon or Whole Foods products for 25 cents an hour, or put out California wildfires, or be a slave. Or die. That's your job. So don't feel bad. If you don't have rich parents or some fat ass $1 million inheritance to afford a house and healthcare for the rest of your short miserable life, don't feel bad. That's the state of everybody. Even the reasonably rich, the top 10% of people are still struggling. Even people making over $100,000. So that's kind of a depressing stat, but also it should make people feel a little, I don't know. It should make you don't feel bad. Like you're suffering enough, like limping around, worrying about whether that corporation is going to pay you or how you're going to pay off that $700 of student debt this month, and also not be homeless. And if you're trans and a person of color, it's even worse, right? How am I not going to get shot? Well, if I'm on the street and homeless, I'm going to have an increased 30%, I have a 200% increase of getting shot. So, or killed. So don't feel bad though. It's not your fault. That's where everybody is, including the well-off people. Very well. And the two guys, the aircraft engineers that I talked about, one of them that was homeless, one of them lives in a tiny, basically it's a studio apartment with him, his wife, and his kid, and he drinks all the time. And it's pretty sad. And they just live like ultra minimalist. They're like Marie Kondo as fuck, right? Just like throw everything out. Does this full-sized toilet spark joy? Yes, but we need to downsize it to a Hong Kong size thing where you basically have like a tap hanging overhead, and you have like a half-sized like fucking large mixing bowl sized toilet where you like shit, and it's like you have to shit diagonally and hope and you get like a vacuum cleaner to suck it out and shoot, because we can't afford a full-size toilet, right? Like, does having this diabetes medication spark joy? Yes, but I can't afford it right now, so let's just like go slowly into a coma and then have like a little bit of we'll try to score some like down on the corner with the fentanyl dealer, right? The Chinese are building sweatshop factories in America. That's how bad it is. That's how poor America is in large spaces. It's a third world country because they don't build sweatshop. I mean, it's just like Terminus Machina coming true, sadly, but they don't build sweatshop factories except when people are in third world abject poverty conditions, right? And that's what they're doing. There's that Netflix series called, what is it? The Factory. I can't remember what it is. The American Non-Compete talked about it, but but that's where we're at. So the first step to accepting you live in a shithole and you are broke and you're being screwed is to accept your capitalist screwedness.